All right, so I want to talk about morality as its basis in the observable reality. Okay, so this is not going to be um, based on faith. This is not going to necessarily exclude faith, but it's just not going to be based on it. Um, it's just going to be based on what we observe. All right, it's not going to be so. We're not going to be talking about. We're not going to. It's not going to hinge on the fact that there's a God, but we're not going to really appeal to God or anything like that, even though this is not going to necessarily, this is not really about God exists or not. This is kind of coming from an agnostic point of view. All right. We'll just put it like that. And the reason why I'm doing this is basically because for Christians and non-Christians, because it's good to reason certain things out with people, not without appealing to authority, like a Bible authority that people don't consider. Like as a Christian, we wouldn't consider the Quran to be a legitimate authority. All right. And as a Jew, the Jew wasn't consider the New Testament necessarily an authority. So it's good to it's kind of like we would want to reason with people, kind of like how we would do it when it comes to women terminating their pregnancies. We will appeal to things. We will appeal to reason and observable reality to tell them that this is wrong, not necessarily the Bible, unless they believe in the Bible. Okay, so I think this would be good for people to, come together and reason together when it comes to moral issues in a common place, and that's kind of what the purpose this serves. Another thing, this is not necessarily telling you how to act. This has nothing to do with that. We will get into certain moral concepts like, homicide or rape, or theft or stuff like that. But this is not telling you how to act. This is the principles behind why these things are considered quote unquote immoral. All right. Another thing is we're not going to talk about whether we can have morality independent of God. This is not about that. We're just assuming that or that there is such a thing of morality. All right. These are just we're just going to coming from the place that we assume that there's such a thing for morality. Therefore, whether there's a God or whether you believe in God or not. All right. So, yeah, this is going to be observable reality. So this is going to be nature and what we see. Because if you want to appeal to Scripture for the Christians who's watching, the Bible talks about in Romans, how nature testifies of how certain things is kind of nature itself testifies of how things are necessarily quote unquote good and bad. And I say quote unquote, but just for argument's sake. But anyways, let's just get into this. So, and another thing is people all often make false equivalencies and misprioritize things because they don't know how things work. We often talk about the rules, but we don't talk about why the rules are. I mean, what are the principles behind the rules and how certain things should get preeminence above certain things. I think sometimes we have a good idea, but then other times we don't, because people put stuff in proper place. So that's another thing. But anyways, let me get into this. So when you talk about morality, what is morality on its most basic level? All right, morality is a code of conduct. Right? It's a code. I mean, it's basically a code of conduct. It's concepts, it's rules, concepts, and principles to guide human behavior in regards to themselves and things other than themselves, like animals and maybe other beings like aliens, or if there's such a thing, extraterrestrial biological entities, or supernatural entities, whether there's angels, demons, and God. Now, if there is no God or angels and demons or whatever, then we don't have to really consider them. But if they do exist, we do have to consider them, because these are real factors in our well-being. Now, when you have a code of conduct, the code of conduct has a goal, or a goal or goals, and then you have primary and secondary goals, and then you have certain principles that rank higher than the other. So, for example, if your goal is for a person to live in health, you don't want to normally cut their limbs off. But there may come a time where you may have to because they're infected. And somebody who can't see the forest through the trees would just focus on the principle that you don't want to cut their limbs off, instead of focusing on this principle is supposed to serve the well-being of the person, not at the expense of the person. And a lot of times, even in the Bible, like the scribes and the Pharisees didn't understand why the rules were there, so they used the rules, God's principle or God's guidelines, God's laws, at the expense of the people, rather than serve the people how it should. So there's that. So for one, what is the major goal of morality? So the major goal of morality, as most people know, is the well-being of men, right? The general well-being of men, right? The human to maintain and for the flourishing of human life, as Sam Harris would say. Even though I know Sam Harris has fallen out of favor with a lot of people, but we can still acknowledge that this is not necessarily a bad goal. All right, and I used to say healthy human behavior that complements the human design. And our design determines how it's healthiest for us to function. And the reason why I said it like that, even though it's kind of redundant, is because the human design is a tangible thing, right? It's not something based on opinion. And this is going to be kind of a utilitarian approach to morality, so to speak. Very utilitarian in essence. But the human design is a tangible thing. Like a lot of times people base morality on, talk about things that, they talk about things and they may make it about opinion. But when it comes to human health and the well-being of the human body, this is not necessarily, people may disagree on certain things on what healthy is. How can I put this? Like, they may disagree on how much vitamin C you need, but they know that the end goal of how much vitamin C you need is the well-being of the body, right? Like if I got into it with somebody one time. I wasn't really gotten into it, but I had a discussion, and it was just like, well, this is their truth. They was talking about something else. I can't remember what it was. And I was just like, well, no, there is just one truth. If somebody was operating on you and they wanted to put your heart in some random place in your body, and since that's their truth, you wouldn't want to deal with them, would you? And they was like, no. So the human design has very, very real needs and wants and things. It's things, real needs and real needs that's beneficial and detrimental to it. This is why when someone says, how is it hurting anybody? And that's the saying is, how is it destructive to the human design? And this is also why when people talk about when it's detrimental to society, because if everybody did it, society would break down. They're also talking about this in an indirect manner, which is something I'm gonna get into the factors of the human design that we need to consider in the next video. Another one of them, but the major principle that we use to point in this direction is one of the major principles that one of the major concepts that we use to point in this direction is that all human life has high intrinsic moral value, not necessarily market value, but moral value, meaning it's like human life has high intrinsic equal moral value, right? And normally those who are outside the equal are the ones that pay high costs, like a lot of minorities have, and just I don't think there's been a group of people who hasn't paid for it. Maybe not in mass, but there has been individuals in every group who's paid for it because they didn't feel these people were valuable, like white people, black people, Jews. Some people paid for it more than others, but you get the point. This is not really about who paid for it the most. This is just saying that who's ever outside of the group, according to whatever person or group, doesn't get treated with high regard or just straight up expendable. So with this view, and then some people make the cutoff at whether the person's born. Some people make the cutoff at conception. I'm not going to really get into that in this series. I'll get into that after I deal with this. But suffice to say, the whole goal in whatever line we want to draw is whatever's best for the general well-being of men. Now, to be truthful, somebody can justify withdrawing a line anywhere. Just to be real, but in their own mind, it doesn't necessarily. But because people like to redefine stuff now, but generally, if it's about the general well-being, it's both collectively and individually. It's not the individual at the expense of collective. It's not like the human body, where each part is meant to serve the whole. It's not like that. It's more like it's like the hand is important because it serves the body. The hand is not important independent of the body. But with this view, is the individual humans has more value independent of the collective. The collective has value because the individuals have the value, as opposed to the individuals have value because it's part of the collective kind of thing. And this is why it's about the general well-being of men. This is why the people aren't expendable. They may have expendable market value, but not expendable moral value. All right. So those are two, and then you're valuable because you're human. Because you're a human life. All right. If you're a dead human, then we don't really regard you as high moral value. And a lot of times, if you're a living thing, we don't regard you as high moral value either. We don't regard bacteria and flies as having high moral value. So there's that. But and I'm not going to really. So I'm going to focus more so on human to human interaction, not necessarily human, because some people extend this to conscious creatures, and that kind of complicates things. So we're going to I think it makes it a little simpler if I focus on just humans right now, and maybe then talk about outside humans. Other than that, I do think that the outside humans play a factor, but I'll just talk about that. I might talk about that in a separate video in the series. I don't know. I'll get into that. I'll just talk about the ramifications of how valuing certain things at certain levels have certain ramifications, and then you make your judgment on what it should probably be. But yeah, this is just the intro to this topic. Next, I'm going to talk about basically how humans like the factors of the human design as far as what we consider morality. And this is just basically so we can just know how have rank. So we can just talk about how better reason just have more just more better reasoned conversations about morality, because I think when some people ask certain things about morality, they haven't really thought things through. It sounds good on the surface, but it's a surface approach, because when you dig deeper, it's just like, okay, then this things start falling apart, which is how a lot of things are. Yeah, we've seen things that they look good on the surface, but then when we press when we apply pressure to it, it didn't necessarily falls apart. But anyways, that's really all I have to say about that. I'm gonna continue to do this series once every Monday, that's my goal. But I appreciate you watching. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Peace.